What's up, Light Church? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of our Upper Room podcast that we film not in the upper room. Today, we're going to do a little different. We're going to talk probably a little bit about the service, the message that Toby brought this last time, but we're going to talk about some other things too, things that we've gained freedom from, things that we've been convicted of in our own personal lives, and what we're doing to get there, to take that next step. So today it's just going to be Executive Pastor Toby Alsop and myself, Brad Bennett, expert on all things. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's start with, what are some things that are coming up in church that we should be excited about?
Yeah.
Besides salvation.
Right, besides salvation, the focus. So we've got baptisms coming up on the 30th of this month, so this will be April 30th, 2023, if y'all watching 5 years from now. So that's going to be cool. That's always, coming out of that water with a new life is...
Little testimony to that.
Uh-huh.
So 2 years ago, almost to the day, I would say, I'd just recently moved back to Jacksboro. Bethany had just recently moved to Jacksboro. And so we were living here, and we took our kids down to the lake. And this is before the church had the church land. Mm-hmm. And y'all were doing baptisms over kind of where the boat ramp is right there, where that little beach area is. So we got the kids down there. We're swimming. We're having a good old time, And saw y'all doing baptisms down there. And we were like, hey, y'all, we got to be quiet. They're doing baptisms. And all the kids that were with us, they go, what is a baptism? And we were like, oh my gosh, we are doing you guys a serious disservice. We got to get y'all in church, and we got to get in church. And so we did. We started going to church. The next Sunday, we were in church. And so 2 years, like I said, almost to the day, April 30th, 2023, Luke, our youngest, will be getting baptized
cool on
April 30th. So that's just a little testimony to
that's
that,
super awesome.
And how cool God works things out.
Man, he does. We were talking at lunch today, which is Josh's birthday, so happy birthday.
40.
40 years old, man. Golly, that beard's getting gray. JK.
35.
35, man. Big 35. So, we were at Taco Casa and Graham today, chit-chatting over, and he was kind of telling some pretty cool testimonies of, even with yourself, like if you had asked him, as a believer back then, would you ever imagine that you would be going to this men's conference at Gateway, with this individual back in high school? No, was the overwhelming answer on every scenario that he ran through, to include a friendship of ours that if you had asked several years ago, the answer that was probably a unanimous no on both sides. But God works just crazy through all of that, and so he is doing that big time in the church as well. We've got our men's summit coming up. Pretty excited about that. It always seems like these things, when you have like a big opportunity, man, to have a moment with the Lord or whatever, they come heavily contested. Mm-hmm. That's always kind of an unfortunate deal when dudes can't go, just due to whatever reason it is. But yeah, definitely praying for those dudes that can go, that they step out.
Well, it's heavily contested because, just like there's always a spiritual battle going on around us at all times. And so it's not even something, some of them could be work related or whatever, but there's always an external force that drives that, and it's something that is trying to prevent us from getting freedom from something. Yeah. Because the longer that the devil can keep us in bondage, the quicker he can tear apart our marriages, tear us down, and just win. Those are little victories that he wins.
Well, and then each person that experiences freedom, man, essentially is a force multiplier. Because how many people get free from the Lord and then just keep it to themselves? If you truly been free, then you don't. You share it. You can't. what does Paul say? I can't stop talking about the things we've seen and heard. You know, Peter says the same thing. Each person that experiences freedom, and their testimony can be liberating to 2 or 3 others that they share it with.
Well, it could be generational as well.
Right.
This isn't just something that changes, you know, your life.
Right.
It goes to your kids, which goes to their kids. You know, I mean, we've had that discussion in our small groups many times about generational change. And there's also the reverse side of that is there are generational curses.
Right.
The things that are passed down from generation to generation, be it alcoholism, affairs, whatever the case may be. So there always is, like we talked about earlier today, an equal and opposite reaction for every action. There's equal and opposite.
You know, we've got to go to this summit the last couple of years. I have attended that. Josh has attended it even before then. And man, there's something for your marriage there. Your marriage is blessed out of that. Your parenting is blessed out of that. Your work, your relationship with the Lord, your relationship with your brothers that are in the fight with you. You know, I think back, man, what made us like feel so invincible going into battle, you know, back in the day. Man, it was a bunch of 21, 22, 23-year-old kids.
Jacked up on testosterone. Knowing that no matter what, my brother was right there next to me. This is the same thing, man. And so, even if you know that the dude next to you is kind of a turd in this area, or weak in this area, you know that they're strong in this area and excel in this one. And they can, iron sharpens iron. Yeah.
The more dudes that are around, they're godly like that, the more lethal it is for the kingdom. Thus, circling back to our point of heavily contested, so.
That's why whenever you're building something, you need to read the tape measure, you call Josh.
Right.
Because he can do it. Where you struggle.
Man, I don't know what that means. Yeah.
9/8.
Yeah, 9/8. I like it. 17/16.
Well, I know that after hearing the women and after they got back from the women's conference, and Bethany wanted to go, she was too late on getting the tickets. It was all sold out. But she's already bought her ticket for next year. Nice. I'll tell you that, because just hearing all the stories and how it just charges you up. Just like you said in Proverbs, iron sharpens iron. You know, so you get around people like that and it gets you fired up. And it gets you, because sometimes we can fall into this kind of lackadaisical, you know, just going through the motions kind of nature. And Jesus didn't go through the motions.
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do, you know, if we're really living out the Word of God, is we're trying to emulate Jesus.
I think even Paul says that in one of the epistles, man. He says, imitate me as I imitate Christ. I could be off on that, but I'm fairly certain in strange words that Paul's like, man, as I imitate Christ, just try to imitate me. If you can't imagine imitating him, just imitate what I do. Stay in the Word, love one another, teach boldly, all these things, right? And yeah, man, it's pretty interesting. But man, I'm really excited, looking forward to it. You know, praying that everybody receives something, whatever they're after in there, some of it freedom and all that. But and then pretty exciting news too, man. I think we pretty much got the drawings for the new campus kind of lined out, which would be that's very exciting. We'll see what God does there and all that. I get excited about it, not just as a pastor in this church, man, but as a dad, knowing that at some point or another, my grandkids that have yet to come could reach salvation.
And hopefully not for
hopefully time. A very long time, but not too long, you know.
Yeah.
I already feel old and decrepit enough, you know. Just a couple years younger than Josh at 40, so. Anyways, just the future of what God's going to do out there is just incredible, man. So
it is. And one thing about that is I know that, you know, a lot of times we lean on other people in the church to accomplish things. You know, maybe we feel like we don't have anything that we can offer or whatever, but it takes a tribe to get things going, right? I mean, it takes a lot of people. Many hands make light work.
Right.
So wherever, you know, we can help out as a church, as a congregation,
Mm-hmm.
to further the kingdom and further the message and further our church, like, doesn't have to be financial.
Right.
It can be slapping paint on the walls or whatever, but I mean, we can work together and get this goal accomplished, get this thing going.
That's it, man. You can use your hands to show your heart.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, sometimes if you don't have, 10% doesn't necessarily mean monetary, I don't think. Personally, I think that sometimes it can mean your time as well. I don't know.
So tithing is definitely one of those interesting ones that it's kind of when it comes down to like a gut check.
Your heart.
Like it really is like, do I truly believe and trust? Trust is a big thing, and in fact, and that's the only area where God says, "Test me,
Mm-hmm.
test me, try it out, see."
And outgive me.
You
Wink.
can't, yeah, and in a weird way, you absolutely can't. And I wished that everybody would experience that confidence to know that God's got them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the provision it's not from you. It's definitely from Him.
It is. It's funny because I was reading the Blessed Life, or
Mm-hmm.
the Blessed Life. Great book, really is.
Yes.
And in that, he says that he's met two people
Mm-hmm.
in the world, tithers and people that don't tithe.
Mm-hmm.
And your tithers will say, "I'm blessed."
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm blessed.
Yeah.
I tithe. I'm blessed. And then non-tithers will say, "I can't afford to."
Right. And that's something.
It's a stark contrast.
It's crazy, man. We say this saying all the time, and if you hung around this church whatsoever, you've heard this. But God's math does not make any sense whatsoever.
No.
I mean, my wife, Lauren, and I have had some of the craziest experiences with giving. And it's hilarious because we came from like a young marriage of like mass quantities of credit card debt, low hourly wages, poor budget, financial management. Like
Living it up.
dude, when we were, man, I just got out of active duty the first time. Just got home from war, so I lived a very compulsive, reckless, like, man, I'm just glad to be here. If we want this, let's go do it right now. And so we operate that way. And Larry was like, cool, man. This is pretty enjoyable. Like, this is very enjoyable. It wasn't responsible whatsoever. And but we didn't. Sometimes, man, you gotta learn through school hard knocks.
Mm-hmm.
I never would have imagined giving the first 10% of anything that I received in my first fruits,
Mm-hmm.
right, to the Lord, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever that looks like for you, and He will prompt you. That could be, to your local church, which I highly recommend. And if you don't have a local church you're not involved in, go explore them out, check them out, see where you can best serve. If you're looking for the perfect church, they don't exist, and if you find one, stay out of it, because
Mm-hmm.
you'll ruin it. Churches are just made of a bunch of normal folks, and so they have normal folks issues, which
Mm-hmm.
Can come back down to, do I full on trust the Lord with my finances? And
Only one thing is not fallible, and that's God.
Mhm.
So that's exciting stuff.
super exciting.
New church,
New church, man.
new campus, and just growth as a whole. Because our church is growing, and it's growing quickly.
Very.
If you look at the parking lot on a
Yeah.
Sunday,
Yeah.
and you're
Especially
parking in a
the
field
kids'
across
stuff.
the street, yeah, it is growing huge in the kids' stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as things that you've noticed changed in your life,
Mm-hmm.
Aside from our church,
Mm-hmm.
like things that you've noticed in your life that have changed this year,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even, with our fast tracked or something.
Man, that's a great one. I'm a pretty rough, raw dude, so there's always like things that like quickly get fixed, and then there's some like super long term
Yeah.
process stuff that I'd struggle with, and that's why I just embrace the fact that sanctification is a process, and I think that's one of the biggest things, is being patient and giving yourself permission to change slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And being patient with it, and not saying, man, I'm not instantly different, in this aspect. There's certain things, man, that drastically changed, man.
Mm-hmm.
When I got saved, there was things that I've never thought of again. There's things that I let go in ways I've never felt since then. Same with baptizing. Josh baptized me and Larry and the girls in our swimming pool in our backyard several years ago. Man, I came up in a different life. And I read this the other day, and it was an interesting perspective by Joby Martin. He says, this isn't a God of second chances. This is a God of new life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you approach wanting to be different in an area, or redeeming yourself in an area, or becoming better in a different area, you can't look at it as in like, okay, I'm going to try to be better in that area again. You approach it as like you're a totally different person in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Hey man, this new Toby doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look in your life, you and I have talked about drinking and all that. This new Toby doesn't drink at all. And it was way easier instead of just being like, I'm going to dwindle it down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to, stay off the hard stuff. Whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
Just, that's the old me.
Mm-hmm.
The new me doesn't do that.
Well, going back to you talking about giving yourself grace
Mm-hmm.
to take time, there's what's his name? Zane Williams.
Mm-hmm.
He sings a song called Overnight Success.
Yeah.
And it's like, he goes through all the
Mm-hmm.
steps that it took to get there, and then you finally make it to the big time, and then they say, oh, he's an overnight success.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know about all of the effort and all the, all the stuff that you had to go through to get there. And it's the same thing with your personal walk. But,
Mm-hmm.
I was reading a story the other, and it hit me. We were watching something. Me and Luke were on TikTok scrolling through, and it was about penguins.
Mm.
And penguins are distinct in the fact that they know their mother's voice, right? The sound
Mm-hmm.
of their mother's voice.
Right.
They can hear that, and it's very distinct to them. They know it. They go to it. And so, I was just thinking about that, and I'm like, the more you dive into the Word, and the more that you lean into God, the more clear His voice becomes to you. So you've got ears to hear.
Yeah.
That from the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything else kind of gets pushed to the back burner, and you can focus more on that. And so that's really been the thing that I've seen change with me more this year, is that I'm more focused and more intent on the Lord and
That's
growing.
Cool. Yeah.
But also I've noticed that I've got people that are reaching out to me more,
Mm-hmm.
that have issues. It's weird, honest. It's almost like they're, they call me for advice or whatever.
Right.
And they're completely broken. This
Right.
is like coworkers. I mean, some of them I haven't seen in a few
Mm-hmm.
years or whatever. They're completely broken. They're crying, and they want help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your perfect opportunity to step in there and say, look, this is how the Lord changed me. And one of them might be coming to church this Sunday.
And praise God.
Yeah.
That's no one can argue with your testimony.
Mm.
There's no level of apologetics needed for what Jesus has done in your life, right? There's no theology contest that can take place with knowing that Jesus changed your life.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can take that from you. That's why testimony is just as powerful. What He's done in your life and is doing in your life is just as powerful as the word that you read.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. I don't know how else to say that. But that takes me back to Sunday. That understanding that you received comes with responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Or a purpose. And so now you're able to talk to these dudes and they can see your testimony is just a physical example of that. You look at the dude that, okay, would you like to walk? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, then pick up your mat and go on. That mat represented where that dude laid for 40 years, man.
Mm-hmm.
Why does Jesus want him to carry it around with him? He could have just left it there. Because, man, show people where you were. Now look where you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool, man. I'm glad to hear that you have an ear to hear now.
Yeah. That's interesting about the mat and picking up your mat, and just showing people that this is where I came from. I was glued to this thing. This was my life. This is all I knew, and it's similar, very similar. Some people, it's not 40 years,
right. Right.
That you live your life that way, but that's where you were and that's who you were. But that's not who you are.
Mm-hmm. Now that's his testimony. You look at the disciples, right? And if they all came from random odd jobs and different walks of life and all that kind of good stuff, yet they were now going into the synagogues and the temples and preaching the good news of the kingdom of God. A lot of those people, they recognized them for what they were.
Mm-hmm.
Word. old school. Now this is the new life, and they were just walking representation of what Jesus can do. Think of Legion. As soon as he got healed and the demons casted and the pigs, and they went hang gliding without hang gliders.
Yeah.
Legion's like, all right, sweet, man. I would love, or the dude that Legion possessed is like, man, I want to follow you. And he's like, you go back to your hometown and you talk to them about this. Why did he want him to do that? He could have expanded the kingdom by professing his testimony that way, but he needed to go back where people knew him for what he was, so they could see for who he is now, what Jesus can truly do. And that's powerful, man. When people knew you in your old life, especially the rougher you were, going back to our conversations, with Josh today at lunch, these dudes, he knew, man, they were far away, Now they're some of the loudest truth speakers there is, so that's awesome.
Right. Well, I mean, very similarly to what he said, if you would have told me 15, 20 years ago that I was going to be sitting at lunch with Brad Bennett and having lunch and talking about the Lord, I would have said, you're crazy. You've lost your mind.
Right.
On the exact reverse of that, I would have said the same thing. Like, I'm not going to be sitting at lunch and talking about God. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but it's not going to be that.
Anything but.
Yeah.
No, that's super cool, man. And here you are, leading this Upper Room podcast, and couldn't be more proud of you, man.
Well, God has a sense of humor, because it wasn't, I've talked to you guys about this before, but, 20 years ago, maybe more, right at about 20 years ago, I'd said that I'm never going to go to church ever again. I'm not going to darken the doorway of a church, just from bad experiences and things like that. And then you're like, hey, would you mind sharing your testimony on Wednesday night up there? And I'm standing up there telling people about how I said that I was never going to step foot in a church again. And like, okay.
Now you're doing it.
God
man.
said, well, we'll see about that.
There's something about equipping the people to the work of the saints, man, and that's everybody. Like, everybody is capable of sharing their testimony. Every single person. Like we talked about on Sunday, some people are just held back for that fear of, I don't understand, or like they have to explain. You look at Jesus' miracles that he performed, and like spitting in dudes' eyes, or just telling them to get up, or resurrecting by doing that, or just a touching, or whatever. You can't really explain any of them. And even those of like the prophets and all that stuff, like Elisha telling
Smith Wigglesworth, who punched people in the stomach.
There you go. All these things, man. You can't hardly explain them, but it doesn't mean that they're not real. And this need to explain it is crazy. One that I'll share with you, man, and I should have got the x-rays and probably use this as an illustration, maybe we'll one day, but when Taylor broke her arm in the basketball game, I've shared that with you. And the x-rays at the hospital, at the ER, clear fracture just right below the elbow. 5 days later at the ortho follow-up, nothing. Not even a calcium deposit, nothing. No, all of her friends, her peers, folks at church, like, hey, man, we're praying for her and all that. And it's like, the normal response, hey, appreciate it, cool, thanks. Y'all have a great day. But, man, what happens if the prayers of even just one of those persons, moves God to make that miracle take place? Is that for us to just keep a secret? No. Is it for us to understand, like, exactly how he did it? That's not necessary. But should we understand that we need to talk about it? Yeah.
That's how powerful prayer is.
Yeah.
Praying over people. God doesn't want anything less than his best for us.
Right.
And so for you to get a group of people to pray on your behalf and take that to the Lord is huge. I mean, it's very, very powerful you're moving in the kingdom at that point. It's not but it showed itself in an earthly way.
Man, it's prayer is one of those interesting things to me, because some people are like, I don't like to pray out loud and all that. And I'm like, but do you talk to other people out loud? Okay. Cool. Do you believe God can hear your prayers? Yeah. Sweet. So what are we missing there? Just talk to God out loud like you talk to him quietly. That's the same exact thing. It ain't got to be eloquent.
No.
It doesn't have to be some rehearsed deal or meet these criteria and you must have this many thous these and, you know, those in it or Heavenly Father 5,000 times or anything like that. I think about it from a drive-through perspective. This is going to sound weird. If you go through and you're like, hey, I'm after a number 13 with gravy and a sweet tea at Whataburger. Are you like, ma'am, may I have a sweet tea, ma'am, and then number 13, ma'am, with gravy, ma'am. You see how weird that gets?
Yeah.
So do you talk to anybody else like that? Am I like, Brad, hey, Brad, would you like to hang out, Brad?
You talk to me like that all the time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Things to work on in 2023, right? But man, we overcomplicate prayer, and it's distracting for how significant it really is. Because man, if there's anything, you need to really, really, really take prayer as a sincere opportunity to talk with God versus check a block. So interesting, man.
It is. And I think back, I'm going to bring it to a close with this, but I think back to I just look at, when it comes to prayer, I look at who Jesus sought out and who he surrounded himself with. And he's not surrounding himself with people who, you know, were this reverent, like holier than thou.
Right.
He came and he was here for the lost. And so just talk to him like he's a bro, you know? I mean, because that's what he is.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah.
There are some exciting things happening in our church, though. Very exciting. I'm very excited about the Men's Summit. We've got a few extra tickets. If anybody's watching this and they want to go, reach out and let us know, and we'll get you there. We've got the baptisms coming up, like you said earlier. And so if you haven't been and you need to be baptized, again, reach out, let us know, and we'll get you dunked. But other than that, man, y'all have a great rest of your week, and we will see you guys. I know tonight we've got
Floor is Lava.
The Floor is Lava tonight. That's our illumination night.
Yeah,
it's going to be a really good time. Yeah, for the kids, it's going to be. But I mean, if you're an adult and you want to come up here and watch them run around like chickens with their heads cut off, then bring it on. But it's going to be a good time. And other than that, we will see you guys on Sunday, and we love y'all.